Hey y'all, welcome back to Mama's house, where we're eating good food, sharing good times, and we hope you enjoy your stay. Let's get to cooking. Hey y'all, welcome back to Mama's house. I'm in the kitchen. Got my apron on, at least getting it on, because it's time to bake some Easter desserts. I'm going to make our dessert for our Easter table, which thank you to Angela Anthony that she gave me this recipe. I'm going to go ahead and make this Hawaiian carrot pineapple cake. Y'all know that's going to be good, don't you? So stay tuned. Get your pen and pencil out so you can write down some recipes. You know I'm going to have all of it in the description box, but let's get to cooking. Here are the ingredients that we'll be using for our Hawaiian pineapple carrot cake. It's a lot of ingredients, y'all. And I usually don't use this many ingredients, but this is what this cake calls for. So we're going to use 2.5 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a teaspoon of soda, a half a teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and then a half teaspoons each of ground cloves, ginger, and nutmeg. Now I don't have my nutmeg, but I think it'll be all right without the nutmeg. Anyway, in addition to that, we'll use a cup of canola or vegetable oil, 1.25 cups of packed dark or light brown sugar, your preference, a third of a cup of granulated sugar, 4 large eggs, a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 cups of shredded carrots. That's about 4 large peeled carrots, a cup of crushed pineapple that has been drained, a cup of walnuts, and I'm adding a half a cup of coconut flakes. This cake has a cream cheese frosting, and you've seen me make cream cheese frosting a million times, but I will certainly make it for this cake and we'll get it put on. And now let us get into this kitchen. Okay, y'all, so we're ready to make our Hawaiian pineapple carrot cake, and I guess I should throw in coconut as well, but I'm getting ready to make this cake. We will do this just a little bit differently because I have such a great amount of ingredients. So I want to pull together my ingredients. It's a very easy cake to make, but I want to pull my ingredients together first so that I can get all of my wet ingredients, my dry ingredients, and then we'll combine it. Like I said, it's very simple, but you can get inundated when you have a lot of ingredients and it can seem overwhelming. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull together to drain my pineapple and to shred my carrot. Like I said, we're going to pull this recipe by getting our ingredients together. We'll start with draining our pineapple. I have a can of crushed pineapple, about 15 ounces. I'm going to go ahead and drain this, and we'll measure out the 1 cup later on in the recipe as we'll pull it together. But right now, we're going to drain this pineapple. Now let's get our carrots. I have to shred my carrots, and I've already cleaned my carrots and cut my carrots, so it's just a matter now of getting the 2 cups of carrots shredded. Now, I'm not measuring out my carrots as I grate them. I am going to go ahead and just grate as much carrot as I think I need, and then I'll measure it out later. Once that is measured out, then I can use the other carrots for a meal that I'm preparing for later on in the week. So that's what I'm explaining here. But you know, in the last video that I shared about my grocery bill, that's what I'm talking about. I do enough stuff to make sure that I don't have that work to do later on. So now let's go ahead and measure out our flour. The recipe calls for 2.5 cups of flour. I'm going to use cake flour in this particular recipe because I want the cake to be nice, light, and airy. So let's get this all measured out and we'll set that aside and get with the other dry ingredients to get those in as well. So I've pulled together all of the dry ingredients that I'm going to add to my flour, and I will put the text on the screen so that you can know how much of each that I'm adding. And I will put in my baking powder, my soda, my salt, my nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon. So I'm going to put on some dry ingredient music, and you can enjoy that while I do this. Now that all the dry ingredients are in the bowl and I can get my stuff situated over here, I'm going to go ahead and whisk this together to break up any lumps and to incorporate all of these ingredients together. Now, normally, I am sifting my flour and that mixture, but today I'm going to go ahead and whisk it. So now that that's done, let me clean up a little bit and we can get our two types of sugar measured out. Now for this cake, you can use either light brown or dark brown sugar, whichever one you would prefer. The dark brown sugar has more of a molasses taste, and if you like a richer cake with that flavor to it, go ahead and use your dark brown sugar. I think it would be fabulous either way. So I'm going to measure out my 1 1/4 cups of brown sugar, and then I will go ahead and get my granulated sugar and measure that out. Now, you know that white sugar and brown sugar are cousins. Cousins in that the brown sugar is made from white sugar with a touch of molasses. So if you ever run out of brown sugar, you can always make your own with a mixer or a spoon if you got that kind of time with your white sugar and a touch of molasses to your taste, and you can get that mixed in. It takes a minute, but you can make your brown sugar. So now let's go ahead and measure out the 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. Now we'll set that aside and go ahead and get our nuts and our coconut measured out. And you'll notice that the nuts are already chopped. I'm not going to chop them any finer because I want to make sure that we get a bite in the cake and that we actually taste our cup of chopped nuts. And I prefer pecans to walnuts. You can use any kind of nuts you'd like. And I'm going to not toast my coconuts because the coconut and the carrot will kind of blend in together, but you'll get the coconut taste. So here in goes my coconut. And I'm putting them both in the same bowl because eventually they'll all go in the cake at the same time. So I don't have to separate them out. So let's go ahead and clean up a little bit, and then let's pour out our oil. I'm using just regular old vegetable oil. If you want to use canola or avocado oil or any other oil that does not have a taste to it generally, go ahead and use that. And we have our eggs here. And I'm going to add in my eggs my vanilla. And of course, I measure vanilla with my heart, but the recipe says to do a teaspoon of vanilla. But so that's what I'm going in with my heart. Okay, so the hard part is done. We got all the ingredients pulled together. Now it's time to get our cake mixed. This will be the easy part. We'll go ahead and get our mixer set up. And in the mixer, I'm going to start with my wet ingredients. Wet ingredients are the oil, the eggs, the vanilla. And to that, I'm going to add my sugars. It's just like creaming your butter and your sugar for a pound cake. With the oil-based cake, you want to put all of the wet ingredients in together to get those eggs whipped up. And remember, your eggs should be at room temperature. Why? Because room temperature eggs beat up nice and fluffy, and they are better incorporated, more easily incorporated with the rest of the ingredients. So let's get this whipped up, and then we'll go ahead and add our other ingredients. And I am going to mix this together for about 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. You'll see a difference between the way it looks right now and how much volume it has when I go to add the other ingredients. Now, while that's whipping, I'm going to go ahead and measure out my carrots. And you'll see that I'll have some carrots later left over that I'm going to use in my cabbage and carrots later on Tuesday or so. That's what I do with my grocery bill. I make sure that I have some stuff left over and I'm using all that I pull out. So I'm measuring out my 2 cups of carrots. And those 2 cups of carrots you see I'm putting over into my flour because I'm going to allow the flour to coat the carrots. And that will keep the carrots from all floating to the bottom of my cake. In the meanwhile, y'all, look at what's in that bowl and how it's mixing. You see the difference between what was going on in the bowl before? It was a darker mixture. Now it has had more air incorporated in it, and it is a little bit lighter. The volume is a little bit greater, and if I measured it, it would probably come out to be a little bit more than it was when I started. Anyway, now that I have all of my nuts and carrots and coconut all mixed in with the flour, I'm going to measure out my pineapple because I'm going to add this with my wet ingredients. I'm going to press out any extra liquid from the pineapple because I don't want to add any more liquid to the cake. You know, cake is a chemical reaction. It's a wet to dry ingredient reaction. And you see I almost put that pineapple in the flour mixture because I was thinking about something else. But now I'm putting it into the right mixture, which is the wet mixture, and I'm getting that incorporated. Now that that's in, let's slow that mixer down so that we can go ahead and put our dry ingredients in. And we're going to add all of our dry ingredients at the same time. So let's get it in. Now that all of my dry ingredients are incorporated, I'll let this mix just a little while longer, but I'll do my final mix by hand. So let's go ahead and get that done, and we can get it ready to go into the pans. Okay, y'all, so I'm going to go ahead and spray my pans with a butter spray. And sometimes, I like to use my baking spray that has some flour in it. But this cake has an oil base, and I think that the butter spray will be just fine. We'll find out when I'm trying to pull these pans out of these cakes out of the pans, rather, and we'll see if there's any sticking going on. And I'm praying that there's not, because don't nobody want their cake stuck to the pan. Anyway, I'm going to eyeball the 3 layers, but if you want to have a very specific amount in each one of your, and equal amounts in each one of your pans, pull out your kitchen scale and measure out the amount of batter that you will put into each pan. And it will be just perfect. But either way, it's going to be a good cake, y'all. Now our cakes are ready to go into the oven. Let me get this bowl out of the way, and we're going to get our cakes into our 350-degree oven so that we can get these baked. It takes about 30 minutes for all 3 layers to get done, and I'm putting them all on the middle rack. Okay, y'all, so I have the cake in the oven, and it is supposed to bake for 35 to 45 minutes. We're going to see how it bakes. I do have dark pans, so I may turn my oven down to 325. If you have dark baking pans, you may want to turn your oven down just about 25 degrees less than what the recipe calls for, unless it does tell you something else for dark pans, because the dark pans will hold that heat a little bit longer and a little bit better than the aluminum pans or the light silver pans. So I think I may turn my oven down to 325. I'll let you know. And we're going to bake it for as long as it bakes until a toothpick comes out clean. Okay? Have the cakes out and they're going to cool, and then I had a little problem with this one right here, but she came on out the pan and acted right. But we're going to put the icing on as soon as they cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and make my cream cheese frosting, and the ingredients for that frosting is 2 sticks of butter and 1 8-ounce pack of cream cheese. And you're going to add to that a pinch of salt, about a half a teaspoon of salt, and 2 cups of powdered sugar. You'll also add a little bit of vanilla, about a teaspoon of vanilla to your taste, and we'll get that whipped up nice and light. So you want to mix this well together to make sure all the ingredients are mixed well and they've combined well, and you've incorporated a lot of air into your icing, but you don't want it runny. You see how it's still kind of thick, and I still have to work it to get it out of that mixer, the wire whisk. So we want to make sure that that is still thick enough so that it will stand up on the cake. Now, if it is not, and you have a cream cheese frosting, you can always put it in the refrigerator and let it set up a little bit, or harden just a little bit. Not too hard, because you won't get it out of that piping bag, or it will be difficult to get it out of the piping bag. So you see that I have my piping bag that has the tip on it, or in it, down inside of my jar, and I'm just filling it with my icing. That will make it very easy to get that icing down into the piping bag. And I think I have a piping bag that's a little bit too small, but I'm going to work with it anyway. So let's go ahead and ice our cake. I'm going to start with putting a little bit of icing on my cake plate, if you will, and that's really not a plate because I'm going to transfer this cake by way of car to my girlfriend's house. Anyway, I'm going to put a little bit of icing on to the cake plate so that I can ice it. And I think that I want to do it as a naked cake. And if you've ever seen a naked cake, you know the sides are not done, but the layers have icing in between. So I think I'm going to do that. I just decided that. So I'm going to go ahead and put my dots, because I have a single round coupler or tip in my bag. If it were a star, I might do something different, but I like the look of this, so we're going to go with this. And remember, I said at the beginning of the video that my girlfriend had given me this recipe. So I think that I'm going to bless her and her family with this cake because she did ask for it, and I'm going to give it to her, but I'm going to make us one for Easter to have on my Easter table. But in the meanwhile, I want this one to be pretty because I'm going to give it to her and her family to enjoy. Now let me give you a little cake icing music to enjoy while I get this cake iced. Now this is the layer that was giving me a little problem coming out of the pan. The whole layer did not break. That's a big deal when you're decorating a cake. Just that little piece of the layer came loose. So once I put my icing on, that will hold it in place and it will keep the cake stable. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same tip icing like I did before on this other layer, and then get this all smoothed out and pretty and put my final layer on and then do the same thing. Okay, the third layer is on. And remember, when you're doing your icing like this, if it is just your in between your layers, you want to make sure that you have enough icing between the layers to carry that icing flavor all the way through the cake, because it doesn't have the icing on the outside of the layers like a traditional cake does. My husband loves this kind of cake or a pound cake because he doesn't want to have to deal with the icing. But he knows that icing is good, so he's going to eat it anyway. But I'm going to give this one to my girlfriend, Angela. I'm trying to give you an up-close view of what I'm doing so that you can see when I go to put that inner layer of icing in, I want to kind of make it level with the icing that are on the outside so that it will be plenty of icing on the inside of the cake as well. Now let's finish getting this cake iced, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator so that it can set up and chill nicely. After I get all of this final inside done, we'll get it in the refrigerator and then we'll get it out to her house. Okay, y'all, so there's the cake. I'm going to take it to my friend and let her and her family enjoy it. Now, I'm going to make my family one for the Easter holiday. So, I hope that you all can give this recipe a try too. The cake feels really moist. It feels like it's, the texture is good. You know how you can touch a cake and it springs back at you? I think that's what's going on. So I did a naked icing, a naked cake, which means I didn't ice all the sides and put all the frosting on. I just did it enough in between each layer to have some frosting between each layer. So I hope she enjoys it, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Y'all be blessed. Bye. Okay, y'all, so here is the cake. She had a little lopsided look on one side, but the other sides were fine. My friend did have some. She and her family enjoyed it, and I'm glad they did. So, thank y'all so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you give this recipe a try. I'm certainly going to have it on my table for Easter. Y'all be blessed, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Bye.